everyone, I'm Victoria, and today I'm going to be talking about Lifetime movies. Now, if you're like me, Lifetime movies can be sort of addicting, even though they're really cheesy and creepy at times, but I enjoy them so much. So I've picked out some of my favorites that I've seen and ranked them from creepiness / craziness, and I'm going to talk about them today. So you may or may not know, the first Lifetime movie premiered in 1990. So Lifetime movies have been around for 27 years. So obviously I can't talk about all of them, but I can talk about some of my favorites. So to start off, we're going to take it all the way back to 1996 with Twisted Desire. Now the reason I chose this one is because it has Melissa Joan Hart in it. And if you're like me, you know Melissa Joan Hart from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Now I used to love Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And this film has not one but 2 stars of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. It also has David Lasher, who played Josh in the later seasons of Sabrina and was a love interest of Sabrina. So Twisted Desire is basically about this girl named Jennifer who manipulates this boy named Nick into murdering her parents for her because she wants to be with her boyfriend Brad. And she tells this boy Nick, who's an ex-con, by the way. I don't remember exactly like what he went to jail for and what he got in trouble for, but he is like madly in love with Jennifer, so she kind of uses that to her advantage and tells this Nick person that the only way that they can be together is if her parents are like no longer in the picture. But her real ploy is that she just wants to be with her jock boyfriend who broke up with her because he didn't like her father's attitude towards her. So that's kind of like her ulterior motive in the film. And you know, she kind of like plays into this relationship with Nick, and then when it comes time for the crime to actually take place, Nick changes his mind and doesn't want to do it, and Jennifer's like, no, like you have to do what you promised me, and basically encourages him. So the crime happens and Jennifer goes to live with her grandparents, and Nick becomes the prime suspect. And Jennifer kind of like now ignores Nick because she's back with Brad, but she does certain things to like implicate Nick even more. So she calls the police station anonymously and says like where the murder weapon is and things of that nature. Well, one of her friends, and it's been a while since I've seen this one, but one of her friends like finds Jennifer's diary and reads through it, and it basically like explains everything and how, you know, she had this plot and, you know, it was all to get Brad back. And so like her friend like holds on to that information, and I don't quite recall like what she does with it, but it's actually Brad is the one who makes Jennifer confess. Like he kind of manipulates her or coerces her into confessing. And so the film just kind of like ends with like her involvement and her arrest and like her sentencing, and that's the end of the film. Well, while I was kind of prepping for this video, I discovered that that was actually based off a true story. So this is kind of a theme with Lifetime movies, where a lot of their films, especially the crime ones, are based off of true stories, but obviously Lifetime kind of takes them and does their own little spin on them. So that is Twisted Desire. The second one I'm going to talk about is the Pregnancy Pact, which again is based off of a true story. I'm not too familiar with the true story, so I'm just going to talk about the film. But the Pregnancy Pact is interesting, to say the least. It's a very interesting story, and I remember when it like came out and watching it when it like came out and just thinking it was like the most absurd story ever. And then like I found out it was based off of like a true thing that happened, and I was like, oh my gosh. So basically the Pregnancy Pact is about this group of girls who have like these idealized versions of motherhood, and they all want to be young moms, and they all want to have like kids around the same time so all their kids can be friends because they're friends. And the movie kind of begins with this girl, Sydney, who used to go to this high school, but now she's like trying to become a journalist or something, sends out this like video blog of like teen issues, and then she kind of discovers that her former high school has had like a really big surge in teen pregnancies over the past several weeks. So Sydney ends up going to the school to interview these girls, and that's where she learns that, you know, they have these ideal versions of motherhood, and 3 of the 4 girls are already pregnant, and 3 girls are pressuring this girl Sarah to get pregnant as well. Sarah becomes pregnant, and she thinks it's going to be so great and that like her boyfriend's going to be so happy, and things definitely do not go as she planned. And her boyfriend kind of rejects her, thinks that, you know, she manipulated him. Sarah becomes like really sad about that and stuff, and she sort of becomes like an alcoholic. Like, the ending comes and she makes up with her mom, and she decides that she's going to raise her baby on her own, and that's like kind of the end of the movie. And it's just sort of crazy because it's like, you know, these teens, and they decide that they want to be moms, and kind of the craziness that goes along with it. It's just kind of a crazy Lifetime story, but not as crazy as the next one. So this summer I watched probably the creepiest and craziest Lifetime movie that I have ever seen, and it is called Sugar Daddies. And Sugar Daddies came out in 2014, but the first time I saw it was this past summer, and let me tell you, it is crazy. And not so much in the beginning, like the beginning part of it is just kind of like, ugh, like just kind of cringeworthy. So I could talk about this movie forever, but basic plot line is there's this college girl named Kara, and she is like, has financial problems. Like, her dad had some accident, so he's like waiting to hear about insurance money, and then she's in college, so her family can't really pay her tuition, and she gets like laid off her like coffee shop job because they hired too many people, or she's a waitress or something like that. And so then her friends and her roommate tell her about this like sugar daddy thing, and she's very reluctant to go, and she ends up going to this like sugar daddy soiree is basically the best way to describe it. And she gets, of course, advanced by the most like sought after sugar daddy, like the richest guy there and everything, and he comes up to her and says that, you know, he's attracted to her, wants to take her on a date. She like rejects him, says no. Her financial situation gets worse, and then she decides that she should take him up on this date, and his name is Grant or something like that. So they go on a date. She kind of gets all these luxuries, her school bills are paid for, and all this sort. Well, things kind of go downhill when her father finds out and shows up at Grant's mansion and like demands that he stay away from her, and that, you know, he can't, you know, believe that she's with this guy. And basically when he's like, are you coming with me? And she says no, she's gonna stay with Grant, the dad's like really defeated and like leaves, and basically is like, I'm not gonna talk to you anymore. But it doesn't bode well for her either, because Grant rejects her because her father got involved, and he's like, well, I can't have fathers showing up and things like that. So he breaks up with her and takes everything away. And she's kind of left in this situation of, oh shit, what do I do? And she decides to try to win Grant back. And in the process of doing that, he says, okay, I guess I should pause it right here and say that earlier in the movie, there's this scene where they're like about to do the deed, and this Grant guy says how he likes to be like choked, and she's like not okay with that at all. So basically, fast forward to where I just left off, and he says, you know, oh, if you get your friend to come home with us, then I'll like reconsider being your sugar daddy, basically. And so she does get her friend to come, and this Kara is like so distraught, she doesn't know how she's gonna get through this, and her friend gives her some kind of like pill or something and says, you know, this will help you get through it. She immediately gets sick from taking it and like runs off to the bathroom, and her friend decides, well, I'm just gonna go do my own thing and get this sugar daddy for myself. So her friend goes up to the room, seduces Grant, and then decides that she will do the dirty with him and that he can do whatever he wants to her. So he ends up choking her, and chokes her so hard that she dies. She dies. And this whole time, you're just thinking that you're watching this movie about like these girls who have sugar daddies. And then all of a sudden, 20 minutes before the movie ends, they throw in this murder plot. And you're just like, what am I watching, and what is going on? And then this Kara girl comes back and sees her friend and is like, oh my god, and then somehow she like leaves the room, and then her friend's like gone, and this Grant guy tells her, oh, she just like passed out because she was really drunk and my bodyguard man butler person took her home. But then this Kara becomes more suspicious, and this Grant guy tries to get her killed. And it's just like the last 20 minutes of this movie are crazy, because you're still like trying to wrap your mind around the fact that you thought you were just watching this movie about sugar daddies and it would end some way, and then all of a sudden there's like a murder and all this, and eventually her dad comes to her rescue and the movie ends, and you're just left sort of being mind blown, because you're like, Lifetime, what are you doing to me? I think of all the films, that is like by far the craziest Lifetime movie I have ever seen, ever. Out of 27 years of Lifetime movies, this one by far is like just like a WTF moment. So that's Sugar Daddies. I have a couple more that I'm just like, I guess honorable mentions that I'm just gonna briefly talk about. So there's this movie called And Baby Will Fall, and it came out in 2011. And this is another like kind of crazy one, but I actually really like it. And it's basically this husband and wife, and they really want to have a baby, and the wife is pregnant, but she's already had like 2 stillborn babies. So she's very superstitious through this pregnancy because, you know, she really wants a kid with her husband. And they have this like garage sale, and this neighbor girl comes over named Melinda, and she's also about as pregnant as the wife, Ivy. And, you know, she's like knows David, the husband, from like high school or something, but he kind of acts like he doesn't really know who she is. And somehow this Melinda gets a tour of the house and everything, and then she goes missing, and the police automatically suspect this David guy. And through like all these other little things, Ivy becomes suspicious that maybe her husband was having an affair with this Melinda girl, and maybe like he did actually do something to her. Well, then she does more investigating and finds out that this Melinda girl had like a huge crush on David, because once in high school he like did something for her, like saved her somehow. And it just turns out that this Melinda girl is like kind of this crazy stalker and was never actually pregnant. Like, she just wants Ivy's baby. So at one point Ivy comes home because David's like at the police station. Ivy comes home, and this Melinda girl takes her to the attic and like tries to induce labor in her, and Ivy ends up escaping down like the laundry chute. And it's just so crazy because you're like, what is going on? It's like a typical Lifetime movie. Like, if you had to explain to someone who didn't know what Lifetime movies were, like, this is like a plot you would use to describe it. And so then, you know, in the end, like, I forget what happens to this Melinda girl. Honestly, it's been a while since I've seen this. So something happens to this Melinda girl, but then David and Ivy end up together and they have their baby. And it's, you know, typical Lifetime where there's like this creepy stalker lady and there's accusations and all that. Last movie I'm going to talk about is Deadly Honeymoon. And this movie has Chris Carmack in it, which if you went to high school in the early to mid 2000s, you know him from the OC. If you go to school now or are still from that mid 2000s group, you know him from Nashville. And in this movie, basically about this couple who had just got married and they're newlyweds and they're on their like honeymoon cruise, which turns deadly. Trevor goes missing and his wife is found like in the hallway, not knowing, like so confused because she doesn't remember like how she got there. And luckily, the I agent on board, who the captain says, hey, I want you to investigate this, but discreetly. So she like conducts her little search thing and there's like a couple of suspects. And then the wife is a suspect too. They like think that for some reason this girl, Lindsay, I think is her name, murdered her husband and that she's manipulating everyone on the ship and like her stories and all this stuff. But in the end, nothing happens because it's out of the FBI agent's jurisdiction to do anything and there's like not enough evidence. It's all like this circumstantial stuff and nothing can really be done. So like the case closes and they're just like, Trevor was lost at sea. And that's the movie. Like there's this huge big thing where you're like, oh my gosh, who killed this guy? And there's no real resolution. It's just like, lost at sea. So that is kind of gonna round it out for me talking about Lifetime movies. There are so many more that I could talk about, but I just kind of picked some top ones that kind of have crazy plot lines with weird resolutions, no resolutions. So I hope you enjoyed this. I would love to hear about some of the Lifetime movies that you guys love, so please leave them in the comments below. And if you would like to see another video similar to this one, please give this one a thumbs up, and I will definitely think of another one to make. I could definitely make one about Lifetime Christmas movies or Hallmark Christmas movies. They're both about the same level of cheesy. So thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Have a wonderful night and a wonderful tomorrow.